When we look at the Enneagram, that was popularized by a Russian mystic named Gurdjieff and has been evolved and deepened in spiritual psychology. They have this notion of us being sort of dominated by one of the three centers I've been talking about, although their connotations might be a little different than mine, but that's where I originally sort of encountered this division of the self. Belly-centered people tend to be really dominated by anger, aggression, hunger, physical needs, and dominated, I would say, like troubled by it. It's both a source of strength, but also maybe a source of complexity, where that anger gets sort of turned against themselves or turned against other people, or sort of disconnected. It's kind of the primary feature of themselves, but one they still have to master. Heart-centered people tend to be very emotional, connected with their social world, and really concerned about how to be lovable, how to be loved, how to kind of acquire and sustain love, and similarly can be outwardly focused, can be inwardly focused, or just sort of disconnected and just all about image and social status. Head-centered people tend to be obviously up in our heads, but tend to be dominated by a sort of fear, a sort of sense of basic unsafety in the world. It's this sense that in my body, in my heart, it's an unsafe place, but in my head, I have power. I have a lot of intellectual capacity. I can imagine safety. I can kind of get control by just thinking really hard. Except the paradox that's at the heart of that is that the control you get from your head isn't really practical control in your body. There's this whole translation that has to happen. And one of the ways I think about it, because I tend to be a head-centered person who also felt powerless, the heart maybe is connected to the hands, it's our doing. The belly is connected to our legs. It's how we operate in the world, how we move through the world. But either way, these lower centers are just very much about being in this world and doing things, whereas the head is just the head. It can direct things, it can kind of witness, it can kind of give information, but it can't do much. It can become disconnected from the world. It can feel powerless, especially if the head is not in a good relationship with these other parts of us. The head-centered people in a state of unhealth tend to really withdraw, and it's kind of living at the top of a very tall tower. You can look down and you can see everything that's going on, and you can have a lot of clarity from that position. You can look down and you can just see patterns. You can all that makes sense, and you can feel a lot of mastery that way, but you can't do anything about it. People tend to get caught up in these ruminations and reflections, or trying to kind of get control from the top down. But when we actually want to be effective, we have to be down. We have to be in our bodies, and we have to be in the world. And when the head is not integrated with the body, we can lose all that clarity and that beautiful, big picture thinking in the distress of being in our bodies and flailing and being anxious or being uncomfortable with connection, or somebody's having a feeling at us and it just floods us, and all that head stuff is gone. So the beauty of working with these centers, as I've been offering, is that it starts to cultivate, it can help you to change your relationship with your more predominant center, but it also really starts to bring them all into their right relationship with each other, and frees each of the centers up to do its job that it's really good at, and to be supported by the other centers in doing their jobs that they're really good at. So we've engaged the belly, we've engaged our capacity for our life force, our being in the world. We've engaged our hearts, our capacity for connection, for belonging in our communities, and giving and receiving love in kind of a spacious way, so that we're not overwhelmed by other people's needs or feelings, and we're not pushing them away. And now we come to the head, which has this really lovely capacity for openness and softness that is kind of hard to imagine, and sometimes I think scary for people who are very head-centered, because the head, in the ways that I've sort of learned to work with it as a center, the energy center, is very much like a chalice. It's very receptive. It's like this cup that's taking in experience and information and just able to be very capacious with it, to just let the river kind of flow through, and you can be a witness to all this information. And then all that information gets sort of available to these lower centers that can do something with it. Part of what this came from in terms of practical or things that I've read is, I was, a few years ago, I was watching the movie Hereditary, which, if you're not into horror movies, it's not a movie you should watch. But it led to this interesting conversation because there's a very predominant theme about losing one's head that comes up in that movie. And what's interesting about that is it's a horrific thing, but it's also kind of a prelude to a spiritual transformation that happens. And I was talking to a friend about it who told me about this website called The Headless Way. I believe it's headlessway.org. And this person has all these exercises, and their basic teaching is that we don't have heads. And the sooner you can get clear that you don't have a head, the more you can open up to your true spiritual nature, your true understanding of the world. And they have all these really interesting, trippy exercises to help you to realize that you don't have a head. And so one of the basic premises is that most of us, we can, when I look down, I can see all the rest of my body, but I can never see my head. I can see my head reflected in, for example, the video that I'm shooting right now, or the mirror. So I'm reasonably sure I have one, but at the same time, I'm only perceiving through the head. I'm never able to fully witness the head in process. I can only see a reflection of it or a representation of it. Whereas with my hands, I can see my hand, and I can see it while I'm being my hand, if that makes sense, while I'm moving it and experiencing it. So I can see it from the inside and the outside. But my head, I can only be on the inside of it, or see, again, reflections of it. Meditating on these exercises that they're offering and kind of dwelling in this world of headlessness really does change our experience in this really subtle, interesting way. My sense is that it's kind of it's an initiation of sorts. It's a moving of consciousness. It's not something necessary, but at the same time, if we're working to become really aligned with ourselves and to become both really present in this world, but also aware of our divine spiritual essence, this is one of the paths, and this is one of the ways that I understand it can take place. It's not something that's scientific. It's something mythic. It's something experiential, and something that we can only kind of practice and experience and just see what that's like. And I think part of what happens in that is the removal of the head, metaphorically, is about getting that intellect out of the way so that the true nature, the deeper nature, the broader nature of the mind is able to emerge. And this is kind of scary to say. It's kind of scary to work with. There's a moment that we're in right now. I think we've been in it my whole life, but it feels, like we're coming around to this sort of decay of critical thinking and the ability to balance both the intuition and critical analysis. And we've really kind of pendulumed between the two, where intuition was kind of mystical nonsense, and science and critical logic and critical thinking, that was the only truth. But that in of itself is kind of a dead end. I mean, obviously it's gotten us a lot of technology and a lot of development, but in a way, the critic just can only analyze and tear apart. It can kind of innovate things, but there's no reason for it. It's just creating new technologies and not with a sense of purpose or a sense of kind of higher integration. It's just kind of because it's interesting. It's very disembodied. That critical thinking that's disembodied from the rest of our bodies can be kind of monstrous in its own way. It can tear us down. It can create things that are not good for us because it's not really respecting or aligning with our heart and our belly needs and our centers. On the other hand, in many of my communities, we've really worked with integrating the intuition and moving into that more holistic sense of broader consciousness, and sometimes with rejecting critical thinking. And there's been a lot, I have a lot of concerns about that. It seems like it's contributed to people believing a lot of stuff without evidence and not really being able to or willing to engage in a critical way with their own beliefs. And it kind of contributes to a lot of the conflicts that we're having around medicine, around vaccination, mental health. But on the other hand, we're totally throwing away all of that capacity for critical analysis and checking claims, and we're just embracing whatever intuitively feels right. I think there's dangers in that too. And dangers of being bullied, abused, being sort of held hostage to somebody else's intuition. And it's sort of the person who's the most charismatic wins, and not necessarily the person with the most efficacy or the best ideas. And so I have concerns about that. But my hope, and all this is kind of wondering back to, is my hope is that the antidote is that alignment of all of the centers, that they're all working together, they're all valuable. And so I want to offer this kind of meditation just to help you connect with a little taste of what it's like to have your head center be in this open, receptive, kind of watery state, but anchored by these other centers. My work has really led me to this sense of working with the head as a chalice. The skull is a cup. It's containing kind of the watery container of both our sensory experience, but also our nervous system, our brains, and all the fluids that are involved in that, and all the fluid of our nervous system that moves through our body, and that our senses are also fluid in a way. My face, my head, contains so many of my major sensory organs, and they're all holes. They're all things that take in, that things flow through. My mouth and my tongue take in sensation, like flavor, food, nourishment. My ears take in sound. My eyes take in vision. Some people think there are other kind of like sensory, kind of psychic sensory organs, which I won't get more into, but there are some that are supposed to be on the head as well. So, and just take a moment. We're just gonna really kind of tap into what that's like to really be in that receptivity, to be taking in the fluid, the flow of sensation. So I just invite you to take a moment and get comfortable. You put your feet on the ground, or kind of sit on the ground, or otherwise just feel the support of the ground. Take a breath into your belly, just opening and charging that energy in your core. Maybe imagining there's a fire at the center of you that you can enliven with your breath, like billows in a forge, just making it hotter and stronger. And just knowing the fires of your vitality are here to keep you safe, to anchor you to your body, your belonging in this world. Bring your awareness up to your heart that's moving that breath in and out of your body. Just that opens and softens your heart, so the light of your connection can just flow outward towards others, can shine like a sun, reaching out and touching all that's around you. But letting you just be centered, so you don't have to move toward or away from anyone. You can just be shining yourself, supported by your belly. And then just bringing your awareness up to your head, maybe the center of your skull. And just let your gaze soften. If you might close your eyes, if that feels okay. Or you might just kind of bring your awareness to the peripheral vision, the edges of your vision, so that you're kind of taking in as much sensory, visual information as you can, but not focusing on any one thing. In fact, that might be a little better than closing your eyes for this exercise. but just do what feels right, what lets you really settle into your awareness. And just letting the field of vision just move through you, not doing anything with it or about it, not trying to look for anything, but just allowing all that you see to come into you. And so too with your hearing, your ears, just allowing sound to move into you and through you, just like it's a river that's just flowing through your head. And you don't have to do anything with it, it's just being in that flow. And your head is just centered, not taking in everything, not trying to hold this experience, not trying to close or contain anything, just letting it move in and past you, noticing the sensations of skin, sensations on your face or your hair, letting those sensations also move through you like a flow, like a river. They might be passing, they might be stagnant, they might be sharp or dull. Maybe there's tension, or maybe there's ease. You can just let it flow, not doing anything with it, just witnessing. Also the sensation of smell and taste moving through your nostrils or your mouth. Just letting those sensations move through you as well, letting them enter your head and then move away. Just keep passing along. And your head can just open like a cup, gathering in the water that's flowing through it, letting itself be filled and emptied out, not holding anything, not trying to hold or contain or shut anything away, just relaxed and open, and just noticing how when you're relaxed and open, things get less sticky. Information comes and goes. And there's a you that's just able to watch it. And perhaps in this state too, you might be having visions, imaginations, memories, thoughts in your head or images, maybe words. Maybe they seem personal to you, something in you that wants attention. Maybe they seem to come from elsewhere. You can just keep breathing and just letting these two be like a flow, the water flowing through your head. Not having to grab onto them or make a meaning out of them. And not having to shut them away or be afraid of them. Knowing that you're supported and you're safe in your belly, in your heart. And there's nothing to fear in a thought or an image just passing through your head like water. Just like the river, it'll be carried away. Within the second you even know it's there, it's gone. Just notice how that feels in your body, just to hold your experience in this way. And just letting your awareness that's been tracking and observing just just making notes of anything that feels particularly salient or emotional, energetic, something that you'd like to follow up with. And then just begin to let this go. You can kind of let your gaze return to focus. Let your body move a bit. Feel your feet on the ground. Stretch. You might kind of put your hands on your head and back of your head, just to kind of close things up a bit. And I would encourage you, if this was useful to you, to explore bringing this in different parts of your life. I kind of bring it up at work a lot, but my work is a lot about sitting and listening and being really connected to people and just really taking in what they're giving to me. What I really like about this approach is how much of it's letting me stay centered and just letting things come to me. There's no stress, there's no tension or anxiety or fear, no reaching or striving or avoiding. It's just being open to what's coming towards me and letting it come. There's such a relief in that, and there's such power that happens when we can just be open and have a sense of confidence that what we need will come to us when we need it, and that even in this relaxed, open, receptive state, we could just put out that ask of information, for connection. We could ask another person something we'd like to know. We could ask a friend, a family member. We could ask our spirits or our gods, whoever we work with. And then we can just be open and let the answer come to us.